Hello and welcome to the review of the Spark 118 resin model of the DeltaWing Nissan Le Mans 2012 car. Back in 2009, Ben Bowlby and his employer at the time, Chip Ganassi, presented the DeltaWing car as a concept for the new Ford 2012 IndyCar spec chassis. It was officially presented at the 2010 Chicago Auto Show and of course turned quite a few heads. IndyCar was looking for an exciting replacement for the aging Dallara IR 0305 chassis it had been using since 2003. Although very futuristic looking, it was quickly dismissed as a new IndyCar chassis. The car looked more like a fighter jet with its narrow front, arrow-shaped chassis and big tail fin. The idea behind it was that it needed a smaller engine with less horsepower and less fuel for the same performance as the current IndyCars due to its particular shape and low weight. It would be slightly faster on the straights and equally quick around the corners, but IndyCar opted instead for a new Dallara chassis which was much more conventional looking. Now too much money was thrown at the idea by Ganassi to just put it in the bin, so they lobbied around to see if anyone else wanted to take a punt at it. Don Paynos, the founder of the American Le Mans series, took the project to sports car racing and aimed to enter the car at the 2012 Petit Le Mans race at Road Atlanta. The ACO, the Le Mans organizing body, was then contacted to see if such a car could be entered. They got the needed permission and even got invited to race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans as a Garage 56 entrant, which is reserved for experimental vehicles. This meant any result would not officially count as the car is not entered as an LMP1 or LMP2 car or a GT car. The concept car was then modified to a two-seater configuration, given two sets of headlights, and the long nose was shortened. Michelin and BBS were convinced to develop and produce bespoke 3.9-inch wide racing tires and wheels for the narrow front. The sports car version only had a 40-liter fuel tank, weighed only 475 kg and had an extremely low drag coefficient. This all meant it only needed a small engine and the stress on the tires would be significantly reduced. The car didn't need any wings as the underside produced enough downforce combined with the rear biased weight of the car. A few manufacturers were contacted to step into the project, but all but one declined. Only Nissan were willing to take the risk and provided the engines to the project in exchange for the naming rights. This only after they witnessed a test with an unbadged engine to see if it actually worked as they said it would. Dan Gurney's All-American Racers was given the task to build the cars. Highcroft Racing would be running the team and Don Paynos would be funding the whole project. For the race at Le Mans, Highcroft Racing provided Marino Franchitti as their lead driver, yes, Dario's younger brother. Nissan drafted two of their factory-backed drivers, Michael Krumm and Satoshi Motoyama, who were teammates in the Japanese Super GT series at the time. They qualified the car in 29th position, some 19 seconds behind pole time and amongst the slower LMP2 cars. The race, however, wouldn't last long as they retired due to a crash at the Porsche curves, following a collision with Kazuki Nakajima's Toyota. Motoyama, the driver at the time, then desperately tried to repair the cars for 2 hours to be able to drive it back to the pits for necessary repairs. The team even sent some help to guide the driver what to do, but to no avail. Ironically, the unique weight distribution of the because of the narrow front meant it couldn't drive any further with the sustained damage. The footage of the desperate attempts of Motoyama is just heartbreaking to see. The car went on to compete at the Petit Le Mans race later that year with Gunnar Jeannette and Gran Turismo Academy driver Lucas Ordóñez. Jeannette grabbed headlines in practice, crashing spectacularly when it collided with a Porsche GT car and it even flipped over. The car was repaired for the race luckily and finished an amazing 5th overall, albeit officially unclassified, just like at Le Mans. In 2013, Nissan and Paynos went their separate ways, with Paynos being dismayed that Nissan was taking all the credit for the project, while he basically bankrolled the entire operation. DeltaWing with Paynos continued in the American Le Mans series, and Nissan with Ben Bowlby made their own version called the Ziot RC. What followed was a whole legal battle, which is way too complex to explain here. There's a great video by Aiden Millward on YouTube on this subject matter, and if you're interested in this story, then I suggest you look it up. I'll put a link down below in the description as well. His channel is full of very interesting motorsport related stories, and I can strongly recommend it. And to be honest, by the way, his video on the DeltaWing was why I bought this model in the first place, so thank you, Mr. Millward. Now let's have a look at the Spark 118th resin model of the original DeltaWing by Nissan, and it comes on this typical Spark plank. Normally the writing would be here, but for some reason on this model it is in front of the car with all the details of the car and the model. And I'll show the box quickly as well. I'll put the model aside for a sec and take the box. So here we have it with pictures of the car and Spark logos and 24 Hours of Le Mans logos, and basically they're pictures of all the sides of the car. So the front here, the right side, and then the back of the car, and then on the bottom you have all the regular jibber jabber of the model, the ACO logo there, and then all further information about the Spark. So back to the car, and well, yeah, of course it has this very particular shape, especially seen from the top. It has this arrow shape and very narrow front, and I'll remove it from the base now to have a better look at it. So here we have the model itself, and one of the first things I notice when I hold it like this, even the model has this extremely rear biased weight distribution, which is quite logical of course because it's much wider and bigger at the rear, but even the model has this feature. So first I wanted to do a size comparison of the car. It's essentially a prototype that was entered under the Garage 56 banner, as I mentioned, which is why it has the number 0, reminiscent of other famous number 0 cars like Damon Hill's Williams Formula 1 car, for instance. But since the car didn't run under LMP rules or GT rules, I wanted to put it side by side with a GT car to see how it compares size-wise. So let me take the car first to compare. Here we go. So here I have the 2016 Ford GT to see how it stacks up against it. And the front is very narrow obviously, but the back is quite comparable. Also the length, as you'll see, the length of the car is comparable to the GT car. They're about the same length, which in real life was about 4.5 meters. And the rear then, as you can see, it's approximately the same width for both cars. Mind you, the Ford GT is quite a small GT car, but it does give you a slight idea of the overall dimensions of the strange DeltaWing car. So let's delve into the details now of this rather fantastic model by Spark. So at the front on the nose you have this nose hole, and then the two sets of headlights, one on the narrow nose and funnily enough another set on the back there where it widens up alongside the driver almost. And as you can see on the box of the car, of the model, both sets of headlights were actually used, so it's quite special of course. You then have these wheel arches at the front, and then the tires and the wheels of the model rotate as well, as you can see. And as you see, the wheels are very skinny, which looks quite weird actually. Then on the nose you have all of the logos of the partners involved, Paynos, All American Racers and Highcroft Racing, and all under the banner of Nissan Motorsports as well, of course, Nismo. So the wheels again, they're actually very beautifully replicated with these lines on the sidewalls, and I did some upgrades like I usually do with the extra tire markings and barcode decals, which I tried to well, base on pictures that I could find of this car. So yeah, the tires and the wheels are actually very, very nice. So moving further down the narrow front of the car, you have this tow hook on the top, and then on the side the connector for the air hose, which controls the jack that lifts up the car during a pit stop, and a very nice little detail on the model. Further towards the cockpit there's an American flag, since the car is essentially American built, even though it's a Nissan, which of course is Japanese itself, but almost all parties involved are American, so therefore it's a Star-Spangled Banner on the car. The side pods then, where the car basically widens up, is pretty interesting. You have these tunnels underneath, upside down tunnels that go further down underneath the car and actually feeds into the diffuser at the back. So yeah, very nicely done. Above these tunnels you have well, the air intakes with the mesh grille in the front, which is very nicely replicated as well, very pretty, and on both sides as well. Then on the side pod you have the number 0 again, and those secondary headlights that I mentioned. The cockpit has these two big wing mirrors in the front, and as I said, they had to make it into a two-seater, so it has basically two roll hoops. The driver is on the right hand side, and there's an onboard camera housing over the left tonneau with some aerial details which are very refined. On the roll hoops you have the names of the drivers, and in front of the cockpit you have these two aerodynamic belges. In the left tonneau then you can see all the electrics of the car on the floor, and a very nice carbon fiber effect for the insides. And on the sidewall, let's say, of the cockpit on the left, you'll see the WEC and FIA scrutineering logos and stickers, which are very crisp and clear. On the front then, in front of the belge, there is this Nissan logo, which is mirrored for some reason, and two very refined aerials. The driver's side then has a little window at the front, and the steering wheel is pretty nicely detailed, I'd say, with all the buttons on it, and then behind it the flappy pedals for the gear shifts. To the driver's left then you have another instrument panel with all kinds of buttons on it, and again these are pretty crisp and clear to see. The driver's seat then is actually very beautifully replicated. The seat belts are okay looking with the photo etched buckles, but the way the foam seat is done is actually very good, and the texture of it looks really realistic, not plasticky smooth, but very realistic, actually very good. So behind the driver you have the two roll hoops as I mentioned, and the fuel buckeye on the sides with the engine cover clamp next to it. And above that you have the electrical kill switch ring, and on the other side you have another fuel buckeye with the clamp next to it, just like on the left side. And then there's the exhaust of the car sticking out with the heat shield, only on the right, so it's only sticking out on the right, and then the big tail fin that stands above it in the center of the car to provide cornering stability. The rear wheels then, they're opened up at the top, well the bodywork is, with a big pod behind the wheel with the LED rear lights in it. So at the back you have this big diffuser, which is fed by these upside down tunnels in the side pods, which we saw earlier. And on the top then there's something like a spoiler to provide somewhat of a little bit of downforce with these upright gurney flaps as well. And the angle of this part seems to be adjustable as well. If you look at it at the back you can see that. My guess is it would be you would be able to adjust the angle. In the middle then there's this tow hook and a metal bar running across this hole, and the opening is not hollowed out, and they have all kinds of superficial detailing on the inside. Not the best looking thing on the model, I have to say. Another of the lesser things of this model are maybe the rear wheels. The wheels itself, they look good, but they look slightly too narrow to me, especially seen from the top. It's quite apparent. and in my opinion they should be well, a little bit wider, but well, it doesn't deter from the model. But all in all, I'd say it's a fantastic looking model car of a pretty strange but very cool looking car. The detailing from Spark of the wheels, the grills on the side pods and the cockpit especially are very good. I think they did a terrific job on this model car, and I'm very happy to have it in my collection. It's quite a different thing altogether, and pretty crazy actually that this was a real thing and that it actually worked. So this was my review of the Spark 118 Nissan DeltaWing 2012 model. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you like my videos, and I hope to see you soon in the next one.